Maxim Volkov stood alone in his penthouse. The city sprawled like a sea of lights below him. Skyscrapers shimmered in the night, their reflections dancing across the sleek surfaces of his luxury apartment. He could see the faint glow of cars moving through the streets, the occasional flash of a neon sign illuminating the pavement, and the distant hum of life that never truly slept. Despite all the wealth surrounding him, artworks worth millions, rare wines from centuries past, and furniture that had been commissioned from master craftsmen, Maxim felt a hollow ache gnawing at his chest. His fortune, immense as it was, had never bought him what he longed for most: a meaningful connection, someone to continue his legacy, someone who could inherit not just his money but the values he had tried to uphold throughout his life. He walked over to the balcony and leaned against the railing, the cool glass beneath his fingers grounding him. The wind carried the faint scent of rain and exhaust, and he closed his eyes, imagining a different kind of life, one in which he wasn't just an observer of human behavior from behind gates, security, and glass walls. For years, Maxim had entertained the idea of philanthropy, of donating large sums to charitable organizations, of funding schools and hospitals, yet each act of generosity left him more aware of his isolation rather than fulfilling him. The people he helped often treated him as a distant benefactor, a faceless patron. No one had ever truly seen him, Maxim realized, and perhaps he had never truly seen anyone either. The thought gnawed at him persistently. How could he know who was worthy of his fortune if he had never walked among ordinary people, if he had never witnessed genuine human kindness without the complicating layers of social expectation or ambition? The solution, he decided with sudden clarity, was radical but simple. He would become one of them, at least for a while. He would disguise himself as a beggar, step into the streets without the buffer of wealth, and observe the world from the perspective of those who had nothing yet gave everything they could. Maxim spent the next few hours preparing for his transformation. He rifled through the hidden storage of his apartment, pulling out old coats, shirts, and trousers that had been discarded for their age or wear. He dirtied them purposefully, smeared them with dust and mud until they looked convincingly used, and tore the hems to mimic years of neglect. A cap, once fashionable but now faded, was set low over his brow, and a pair of oversized sunglasses completed the disguise. Even his grooming habits were adjusted. He allowed a faint stubble to grow, giving him a rugged, unkempt look, and applied a subtle layer of grime to his hands and face. As he examined himself in the full-length mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back. Gone was the impeccably tailored figure, the aura of authority, the aura of untouchable wealth. In its place stood a shadow of someone who might fade into the crowd, someone who could be overlooked and ignored. The idea excited Maxim in a way he hadn't anticipated. He had always lived within the constraints of expectation, both societal and self-imposed. Tonight, those constraints would vanish. He would be invisible, anonymous, free to see the world as it truly was, without filters. With a final glance at the cityscape outside his window, Maxim stepped away from the safety of his penthouse and into the elevator, each floor bringing him closer to the streets below. The hum of the elevator echoed in the quiet of the building, mingling with his own heartbeat, which thumped faster than usual. He carried no briefcase, no luxury phone, no symbol of status, only a small backpack containing the essentials: a water bottle, a notebook, and a small amount of cash, enough to survive but not enough to stand out. He felt the thrill of uncertainty, the shiver of anticipation that comes with stepping into the unknown. The lobby was deserted, polished floors reflecting his ragged silhouette as he exited into the night. The streets smelled of rain, asphalt, and distant food stalls. He could hear footsteps, muffled conversations, and the occasional laugh of strangers who had no idea that among them walked a man who controlled millions. For the first time in his life, Maxim was just another person in the crowd, subject to the same small indignities, the same random kindnesses, and the same unpredictability that governed everyday life. He found a corner near a busy intersection and took a seat on the curb, folding his tattered coat around him. The first few moments were strangely disorienting. People brushed past him, some noticing and offering nothing, others giving wary glances. Maxim held his head low, not out of shame, but to observe without drawing attention. He watched mothers pulling children along, teenagers laughing with loud voices, street performers entertaining small clusters of commuters. Each face carried a story, each gesture a fragment of life he had never truly seen before. A part of him wondered if he could maintain this charade, if he could truly blend into a world that had always been foreign to him. But even as doubt whispered, he felt a spark of hope. Maybe, in this hidden corner of the city, among ordinary lives lived in ordinary ways, he would find the clues to the extraordinary human heart he had been seeking all along. For days, Maxim Volkov walked the streets of the city, learning to navigate its rhythm without the shield of wealth. Each morning he rose before dawn, brushing dust from his tattered coat and adjusting his faded cap. The city was still quiet then, the streets slick with the remnants of overnight rain, steam rising from grates like miniature clouds. He would find a bench near a market or a busy corner, sit with his knees drawn up, and watch. He observed the interactions of people, the hurried gestures of shopkeepers setting up for the day, the polite nods of neighbors exchanging morning greetings, the brief, silent kindnesses that were often overlooked in the rush of life. He quickly realized that being invisible in society revealed the truest measure of humanity. Passers-by rarely glanced at him, and when they did, their reactions ranged from indifference to subtle contempt. Some hurried past, clutching their briefcases or phones, unwilling to share a moment with someone they assumed was beneath them. Others offered spare coins without making eye contact, a token gesture that carried no warmth. Maxim made a mental note of these encounters, analyzing not just what people did, but why. The city had become a vast laboratory, each interaction a data point in his search for genuine character. It was during one particularly chilly afternoon that he first met Lyra. She was a young woman, no older than 25, with hair tied in a loose braid and eyes that carried a curious warmth. She approached him holding a small paper bag, the aroma of bread and fresh fruit spilling into the air as she knelt beside him. "Here," she said softly, offering him a sandwich and an apple. Maxim hesitated, caught off guard. Most people handed over coins or ignored him entirely. This was the first act of kindness he had received that felt deliberate, personal. "Thank you," he muttered, unsure whether to introduce himself or maintain his disguise. Lyra simply smiled and moved on, disappearing into the crowd as quietly as she had arrived, leaving behind a sense of humanity that resonated deep in him. As days turned into weeks, Maxim began to piece together the subtle patterns of generosity and selfishness around him. He noticed a man who pretended to give coins but then pocketed them when no one was looking, and a woman who refused to share a seat with him on a crowded tram yet offered a warm smile to a dog resting nearby. Each moment reinforced his conviction that wealth alone was meaningless. It was the choices people made when no one was watching that revealed their true character. Maxim's evenings were spent writing notes in a small notebook he carried with him, observations about each encounter, reflections on what kindness, integrity, and courage looked like in everyday life. One rainy afternoon, Maxim took shelter under the awning of a small cafe. He watched a group of children huddle beneath a tree, laughing despite the drizzle, and an elderly man sharing his umbrella with a stranger. The city felt alive in a way he had never noticed from his penthouse, vibrant with small acts that didn't make the news, that no one would celebrate, yet defined the essence of human goodness. Maxim began to feel a shift within himself. He realized that the fortune he had amassed could never replicate the impact of a simple smile, a shared sandwich, or a moment of unprompted care. These moments were priceless, unquantifiable, and they illuminated the qualities he sought in an heir more vividly than any resume or family connection ever could. Lyra became a recurring figure in his daily observations. She didn't make a show of her actions, she acted quietly, consistently, and without expectation. Once, he saw her defend a homeless man from a group of aggressive teenagers, standing firm even when it might have drawn her into danger. Another day, she helped a lost child reunite with their frantic parents, refusing a reward and disappearing into the crowd once again. Maxim began to feel a growing admiration, tempered with the discipline of maintaining his disguise. He had to see more, to test his theory that character could endure, that it wasn't situational or performative. In the evenings, Maxim would retreat to a small, nondescript inn, using the limited cash he had brought to pay for a bed. He reflected on the day's encounters, noting patterns, measuring integrity, and considering what it truly meant to be worthy. The city had become a teacher, and its inhabitants were his lessons. Maxim found himself laughing quietly at human quirks, empathizing with struggles he had never known, and marveling at the resilience of people who had so little yet gave freely of themselves. He realized that finding an heir was not about seeking brilliance or ambition. It was about discovering someone whose heart was capable of generosity, courage, and honesty without expecting recognition or reward. It was during one of these quiet nights that Maxim fully understood the significance of his experiment. The city, with all its chaos and beauty, had revealed the stark contrast between superficial gestures and genuine humanity. He knew now that the person he sought could not be found in a boardroom or among the wealthy elite. They would be discovered in the overlooked corners, among the unnoticed acts of daily life. Lyra, in her quiet consistency and integrity, embodied the very essence of what he had been searching for. And though he could not yet reveal himself, Maxim understood with a profound certainty that his journey, however unorthodox, was guiding him toward the one person capable of carrying his legacy forward with a heart as rich as the fortune he had built. After weeks of wandering the city in disguise, Maxim Volkov felt a strange sense of attachment to the world he had temporarily entered. The streets that had once seemed alien and chaotic now felt like a living, breathing ecosystem of humanity, each person a story, each act of kindness a revelation. But the more he observed, the clearer it became to him who possessed the rare qualities he had been searching for. It was Lyra. Not a single day passed without him noticing her generosity, courage, and innate goodness. And unlike the others he had watched, she never acted with self-interest. Every action seemed natural, effortless, and sincere. That afternoon, Maxim decided it was time. He had played his part long enough. He had observed enough to know that the integrity Lyra displayed was unwavering. As he followed her along a narrow street, he saw her help a street musician adjust his broken instrument, carefully offering a few coins while speaking to him with genuine warmth. Her laughter was unstudied, unpretentious, and her eyes sparkled with the kind of quiet compassion that left an imprint on anyone who noticed. Maxim's heart pounded with anticipation, mixed with anxiety. Revealing his true identity carried risks, not just of embarrassment, but of testing whether her kindness was real. When she stopped near a small park to feed a stray cat, he took a deep breath and approached her without the hat and sunglasses that had hidden his identity. He left his tattered coat in a nearby alley and stepped into her line of sight with a calm, deliberate confidence. "Lyra," he called softly. She turned, startled, her eyes widening as recognition flickered across her face. "It's me," he continued, smiling gently. "Not like this, not as you've known me, but I wanted you to see who I really am." For a moment, Lyra's expression froze. She looked him over, confusion and disbelief mingling with curiosity. "You, what?" she stammered, stepping back slightly. "The beggar, it was you." Maxim nodded, holding up his hands in an apologetic gesture. "Yes, I had to see the world through your eyes for a while, to understand what it means to be truly generous, compassionate, and selfless. I wanted to see your heart, Lyra. And now I know." She laughed, a short, incredulous sound that betrayed her amazement. "You mean all that time, it was a test?" she asked, a faint blush rising in her cheeks. Maxim shook his head. "Not a test, exactly. More like a search. A search for someone whose values align with mine, someone who could one day carry forward a legacy without being blinded by greed or ambition." He paused, studying her reaction. "And I've found that in you." Lyra's eyes softened, and she took a step closer. "But why me? Why now?" she asked quietly, curiosity and wariness mingling in her tone. Maxim smiled gently. "Because I've seen what true kindness looks like. I've watched how you act when no one is watching, how you care for others without expecting anything in return. That's the kind of person the world needs, and the kind of person I hope to find as an heir. I can give wealth, guidance, opportunities, but it's your heart that makes you worthy of it." Her fingers brushed against the small notebook he had carried in disguise, the one filled with his observations, and she picked it up gingerly. "You wrote all this, about me?" she whispered, a mixture of astonishment and humility in her voice. Maxim nodded, a faint laugh escaping him. "I had to remember everything, to make sure I was not blinded by fleeting impressions. But everything in here, it confirmed what I already knew, that you are extraordinary, and I cannot imagine passing my legacy to anyone else." For a moment, silence fell between them. The city moved around them, oblivious to the quiet gravity of the encounter. A pigeon landed nearby, pecking at scattered crumbs, and a distant siren wailed, but neither of them noticed. Maxim extended his hand. "Would you?" consider accepting not just a fortune, but a responsibility, to shape it with the same compassion and integrity you've shown in every small act. Lyra studied him, her eyes glistening, a smile slowly spreading across her face. I don't know what to say, she murmured, though the warmth in her voice was unmistakable. Maxim squeezed her hand gently, reassuringly. Say yes, or say nothing. I only ask that you understand the trust and faith I place in you. She laughed softly, shaking her head in disbelief and wonder. I never imagined that kindness alone could lead to this, she said. But I see now, it does. She looked up at him, her gaze steady and unwavering. I'll do it. I'll honor what you've built, not for the fortune, but for what it stands for. Maxim felt a weight lift from his shoulders, replaced by a profound sense of relief and joy. In that moment, he realized that his experiment, his unusual journey into the streets in disguise, had led him not only to the perfect heir but also to a renewed faith in humanity. Lyra's laughter rang in his ears as they walked side by side through the city streets, no longer beggar and observer, but equals in a shared understanding of compassion, integrity, and the responsibility of legacy. For Maxim Volkov, the search was over, and the world felt brighter than it ever had from the penthouse alone.